Hi, I'm Dr. Avis Williams, the proud superintendent of NOLA Public Schools, and this is Education Elevation, a series of conversations with leaders from throughout our community as we discuss how we elevate education. Greetings. I'm Dr. Avis Williams, the proud superintendent of NOLA Public Schools, and I am here today with Adrinda Kelly. How are you?
I am good.
Great. I'm super excited to dive into a conversation with you. Now, you're a native New Orleanian.
I am.
A Black woman.
Clearly.
A leader within, a leader within our community.
Yeah.
So what gives you joy and optimism in this space? And I lead with that question because, we live in a heavy world. There's a lot happening in our world right now. But I always like to lead with joy. So what gives you joy and optimism in this moment?
Well, I'll keep it 100 with you. Last week it was Beyonce.
Yes, I'm right there with you on that.
But I think more to the point, in the work that I do day to day at BNOLA, I have the privilege of working alongside some of the most amazing Black educators in our city. And just last month, actually about a month and a half ago, we had our annual Black is Brilliant Summit.
Which was amazing.
So
I had the best time.
It was so good to see you there and to see you enjoy the atmosphere. It was a celebration of Black education in New Orleans.
Yeah, Black brilliance.
Black brilliance. And it gave me so much joy to see, educators come out, get loved on, be poured into, have fun, and just get rejuvenated right at the beginning of the school year. And so...
And the timing really was perfect
really
because
was.
our teachers need to feel that love.
Absolutely. Right before they go into the first 8 weeks of school, which can be among the most difficult.
Yes. And starting back after a long, hot summer, I know they appreciated having that positive energy and just a space to be celebrated.
That gives me a lot of joy because I know that when teachers are well, our children are well.
Absolutely.
And so I would highlight that as, the joy of educators generally and Black educators specifically, that as something that gives me a lot of joy.
Yeah. So you mentioned the joy and how teachers feel. And we know that mental health is a challenge and a concern, not just in our community, but nationally.
Yeah.
And I know how busy you must be doing the work of BNOLA and being a leader within our community. So how do you remain centered? What do you do to ensure that Adrinda is okay? Because I always say you cannot give what you don't have.
You cannot pour from an empty cup.
There you go. So what does that look like for you in terms of your centeredness, mindfulness?
Yeah, all those things. I'll be honest with you. Every day, I have a routine. I wake up in the morning, I meditate.
Good.
And I go to the gym. For me, moving my body is really important. Yeah. I spend a lot of time thinking and trying to figure out how to contribute, to the important work of education in our city. And it means I'm in my head a lot.
Yes.
And so for me, working out, going to the gym, moving my body is super important for my wellness. But
do we see a run in our future? Do you run?
Listen, okay. I'm more of a spinning, jump rope. I can do a slow run.
Okay.
I don't know if I can keep up with you.
I'll take that.
But that's really important to me. And then I think I have learned over the years some other practices that are really helpful. For example, when I'm feeling super stressed out, I close my eyes and I start breathing. Okay?
Yes,
breathing
you take a mental minute.
I take a mental minute.
I love that.
I really do. And I find that in that activity of just noticing my breath, I'm noticing where the anxiety in my body is. I'm noticing the thoughts that are bubbling up that are top of mind for me. It just feels like I have more agency. It feels like I can, take it on, right, when I take that mental minute.
Yeah, that is so important. I think a lot of people take for granted that, especially as a strong woman, that we're always okay and on top of everything. But people need to recognize that everyone needs to work on their wellness, their mindfulness. And it's great that you have a routine, and that's worth sharing. So I hope that our listeners will take advantage of the knowledge that you're dropping and sharing all of that. So you are the executive director of BNOLA?
I sure am.
Yes. And so let's talk about that. Let's kind of unpack that. We sometimes hear people say that representation matters.
Yeah.
But can you just share some information with us about why it's important for our Black scholars to see people who look like them in the classroom? Why does that matter?
Yeah. Well, I'll start by sharing a little bit about my experience.
Okay.
Right. So you mentioned earlier that I am a proud Ron Eagle, and it doesn't take long for me to bring that up. Did you? Okay.
You are a proud Ron Eagle. I should have
Eagle.
I should have led with that, huh?
You should have led with that. That's actually really important to
Yes.
me. And what I'll add to that is that I am a proud Ron Eagle from a graduate from a pre-Katrina New Orleans public school.
Gotcha.
And so what is important to underscore in that is that Black educators poured into me and shaped me and cared for me all the way through my K through 12 here in New Orleans. And so in that experience, of course, they gave me a great foundation of academics and numeracy and literacy, but they also gave me what I call spirit capital.
Oh, nice. Spirit capital.
Spirit capital, which is a deep self-confidence, right, in myself, a knowing, an inner knowing that I can do anything that I set my mind to.
Wow.
And an understanding that the point of being smart was to, go achieve as much individual success as possible, but also to get tools, right?
Yeah.
To come back and serve my community. And so when you ask about the importance of representation for scholars, for sure, it is the role modeling that takes place. It is the high expectations that Black educators often model, right? Yeah. But I don't think we talk enough about the brass tacks of what happens when a quality Black educator is in front of a Black child.
Wow.
Standardized test scores increase.
Okay.
Educational attainment increases, right? Black educators, the research shows that Black educators are much more likely to recognize the giftedness of Black children and refer them for accelerated programs. There is a set of practices and pedagogies that go beyond just the role modeling, right?
Gotcha.
That Black educators bring to the table. And in my mind, right, in a city where we have so many of our children who identify as Black, it stands to reason that we should spend some of our focus and some of our energy on surging support to Black educators so that they can do their best work for Black children.
I love that. And that's what BNOLA is all about. It's celebrating, supporting Black educators. So what does that look like in our city? And what are some needs that we have in order for BNOLA to be successful, in order for our schools to really understand the importance of Black educators? What's missing? What's needed?
Well, a couple of different things. So when we talk about Black educators in New Orleans, we have a number of our schools that are led and even founded by Black school leaders. And any person working in and around a school anywhere in the country is doing God's work. So let me say that, right?
Absolutely.
And we all need to be supportive of the work that's happening in schools. The truth, though, and the reality, though, is that Black schools and Black school leaders in our city have not always had the same access to the supports that they need, the financial resources that they need to move their mission. And I think...
And that's a barrier. I mean, if you don't have the funding to do the same things, we often talk about equity as removing barriers, and lack of funding is certainly a barrier.
Lack of funding is a huge barrier. And, without getting too in the weeds, the economics of being a 100% charter space means that it is difficult for a smaller school, right, to have a funding model that is able to sustain all of the administrative costs and overhead associated with running a school in our decentralized space.
And it would be difficult to compete against those larger networks or the networks that do have those philanthropic dollars.
Absolutely. And so one point of view would be, well, everyone should be a larger network, but the opportunity that I think we miss in that is that the whole benefit of moving into this charter model is innovation.
Absolutely. And, I love our single sites. And, for our CMO leaders and others who have heard me talk about our portfolio of schools, I have a special place in my heart for our single sites, to the point that you just made, because I do think that's where we have the greatest opportunity for innovation.
Correct. And I have had the benefit of working alongside some amazing single site charter schools led by Black leaders who are doing, in my opinion, some of the most innovative work in the city. And I would like to see our system be able to embrace that, to support that, and to make that kind of work sustainable. If we're talking about Black teachers, similar to any teacher anywhere in the country, teaching is not a profession that gets the resources and the pay
or the respect. Yeah, I think that's the part that strikes me most.
Yeah, the respect. I mean, the fact that even in those conditions, people show up for work every day and show up ready to do their best for children is something that we should all be in awe of.
Absolutely.
When it comes to Black educators, you have to keep in mind that, when Black educators are working with our children, they see themselves, right?
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful opportunity in that, but that also comes with additional labor, they get called on to do more, right?
Yeah.
And the teachers that we get to work with talk about wanting a supportive network, right? Wanting to be poured into in terms of their own personal wellness, right? Wanting to be developed to be even more culturally competent, right, for the children in front of them. And I think we assume that just because you're a Black educator in front of a Black child, that you're coming to the table with all of that already in place.
Right.
And so we spend a lot of time creating a space of wellness and learning for Black educators in order to help them grow into this identity, right?
Yeah.
And maximize their impact as Black educators of Black children.
Oh, and that is so important. And I love the creating the space, the safe space, the brave space for our Black educators to bring their whole selves into that role, while at the same time getting the support that they need.
Absolutely.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
So how can the greater New Orleans community help support the work of BNOLA? We think about the barriers that you just mentioned, and we all know that education is extremely important in any city, and it's certainly important in our community. What are some supports or some resources or barriers that the community can help remove that would support your work with BNOLA?
Oh, well, at BNOLA, we think about education as a lifestyle, right? Education is a community project. And so we spend a lot of time connecting educators, Black businesses, community organizations to each other to provide that infrastructure, right? That supportive infrastructure around the work that you do, the work that teachers do, the work that school leaders do. I think it is all of our responsibilities, right? To be thinking and shifting our mental models around education in our city. We can both be critics of areas where we need to grow, and also supporters, right, of the work that is happening. And I think too often in New Orleans, we tend to have education conversations that are polarized, right?
Right.
Burn it all down. Nothing needs to be improved.
Right.
And the truth is very much so in the middle. And so I think our responsibility, something we can all contribute to, is shifting our own mental models around the space that we are in, and understanding that there are a lot of bright spots to be celebrated, and there are a lot of opportunities, right, to improve, right? Both can be true.
Both can be true. I love that you said that, because I know when I did my ABC tour, Dr. Avis's Beignets and Conversations, in case you forgot, one of the things that I brought up is that everything is not broken. Let's look at the spaces where we are doing well, where there are reasons to celebrate, while at the same time knowing that we have work to do.
Absolutely.
Our community deserves amazing schools, and our scholars need to have that in order for them to thrive and be successful beyond high school. And especially, when you think about the high poverty nature of our community.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some policies that need to be addressed, in my opinion. I mean, we have a millage coming up to continue to support the facility preservation of our schools. That is important from my point of view. And there are some policies around how that funding is structured and allocated that would, I think, contribute to greater equity, right, in resource use, or just greater ROI, potentially, in resource use.
Yeah, and it matters. We want a positive return on investment.
Yeah.
And, in any school district, you don't want there to be a difference in terms of access or resources from one school to the next. So I'm glad you brought up the funding piece and the equity with that funding. That's extremely important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you start that over again. So let's think about education. It's important. It's an economic driver in any community.
Right.
But you also have people without children in any community.
Yeah.
So how do you see people who maybe they're empty nesters or maybe they just don't have children in the home? How can they support public education within our community and support BNOLA within our community?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. So I am super auntie, for example.
I love it.
Literally, I have so many nephews in particular, and one niece, new niece.
Gotcha.
But I don't have any children in public schools. I don't have any children at all yet. And yet I'm a taxpayer.
Yes.
I'm a property owner in New Orleans. I'm a product of New Orleans public schools, an alumni of the institutions, right? That children are.
So it's important to you.
It's important to me. And so the thing that I feel like I must do, right, is be informed as a voter and as a taxpayer about what is occurring in our schools and the policies that might enable more equity and access for all children in our community, right?
Gotcha, yeah.
And so I think what we can all do is be present, and have our voices heard in local elections, school board elections, millage votes, et cetera. We can also show up as donors and supporters of the work that is being done around education in our city. BNOLA has a wonderful community of supporters who come alongside us in our work. And, resources do matter.
Yeah.
And we do not have enough resources for the public education project, right, in New Orleans. And so how can we think about contributing to schools, to teachers, individually, institutionally? Those are all responsibilities that I think we share as a community, even if we do not have children who are attending public schools right now.
Yeah, because we all want positive things happening within our educational system. And I'm glad you mentioned teachers again, because whether you have children in the schools or not, support teachers, and make sure, and respect teachers. I'm going to go back to that respect thing again. And so you mentioned policies and voting and so forth. What do you think about some policies that you think could be implemented that could help improve our educational system?
Okay, you really want me to go there?
I do want you to go there.
Okay. I'll say this. I think a continued challenge for our city and our schools is this perception that not all children have access to all schools.
Yes.
And it's more than a perception.
It's a reality because we do have schools that require an application process.
Yes.
And so from that standpoint, some children may not be eligible.
And let's break that down, right? And so I've heard you speak about sort of this disparity of access to our highest quality schools, right? When you look at the proportion of white children in our school system.
And to your point, literally we have the majority of our white children are in schools with a letter grade of A, whereas the majority of our black and brown children are in schools with a letter grade of D or F, and that is not okay.
The majority of our most experienced teachers in terms of years of service are also concentrated in some of the, the higher quality schools. What that signals then is at least a curiosity, right? About the policies around enrollment, right? NCAP one, that are contributing to that outcome. Case in point, many of our schools that have these preferencing criteria or these criteria really were only grandfathered into the system very recently. I think
that's true.
This past academic year. And while our state of Louisiana does set some minimums, right, or baselines for expected enrollment of economically disadvantaged children, we don't necessarily enforce those minimums at all of our schools. And so what can we do? Like, we're at a point in this mature very mature charter space, right?
Yeah.
We're 18 years in, where we still do need to have a conversation around ideology and approach that is useful, right? But we also need to get into the forensics of what we're doing. And so when I think about the access frustration that many families have, and this idea and reality that we do have a disproportionality in terms of who's getting access to what school. How do we reverse engineer that, right? By looking at, for example, enrollment minimums for economically disadvantaged children and how those are being enforced. How do we solve for the fact that with schools just being grandfathered into one app, we have basically a mature kind of pipeline that's going to keep those disproportionality stable. We got to be creative. Get into the forensics of it.
And I love the way you framed that. And we do have an equity task force, and I'm looking forward to getting to a better space, because I'm not at all happy with those statistics. And, when we think about high quality schools, one of the things that we hear from families is that there should be high quality schools across every community, right?
Well, can I speak on that?
Yes.
One of the initiatives that has come out of your first year has been a deep look at, a more fuller dimensions, right? That we can use to make sure that the schools in our city are serving the needs of all of our children. Another way of saying this is I've heard you talk a lot about the importance of variety. I've heard you talk a lot about the importance of a more expansive understanding of quality, right?
And choice, because we say we're a choice district, but we want to ensure that choice is a quality choice, where a meaningful choice.
And in my work, one of the things that comes to the forefront in that quality choice conversation is this idea that quality goes beyond, test scores. It goes beyond, school grades, right? Which, in many ways are a proxy for how well our children are performing on standardized tests. Important, right?
Yeah. But not everything, right?
But not everything. And I don't know any family that doesn't have expectations for their children's success that go far beyond meeting standards on a standardized test. They want children, we all want children who have opportunities, emotional regulation, climate, responsibility, civic participation, exposure to different career paths.
Absolutely.
And in many ways, I think there's work to be done in terms of how we assess and incentivize school quality to take on some of these more expansive factors.
Absolutely. Yeah, I could not agree more. And I'm glad that you unpacked that completely, because there's a lot to be said as it relates to equity and as it relates to high quality schools. So I'm glad you unpacked that completely. So how do you envision the future of our community, and what changes do you see as necessary for that vision to come to fruition?
I want a New Orleans that is a place where everyone can have a thriving life, right?
Yes.
And that means, people have access to stable housing, affordable housing. It means people have access to more than living wage jobs, right?
Yeah.
Jobs that are actually giving them the economic resources they need for them and their families to thrive, right? I want to live in a city that has infrastructure. Okay.
Yeah.
That has infrastructure.
Yes. That matters.
I want to live in a climate resilient city, right? I want to live in a city where the culture continues to be as vibrant as it is today, and the folks who are the culture bearers, right, are participating meaningfully in the economic benefit of their cultural production.
I love that.
I think we share a vision. I don't think we share a vision for how to get there, and I think that's some of the challenge. What I think is foundational to moving towards that vision is education, right?
Yep.
If we could all rally around making sure that our children are strong readers, right?
Absolutely.
I think that's a great step one.
Yes. And literacy has to remain a priority. Absolutely.
It has to remain a priority. And I think secondarily, we need to figure out how to create more economic mobility for more of New Orleans citizens, right?
Yeah.
We are setting ourselves up for a brain drain if we don't figure out how to have a city where children who are being educated well, because they will be, we will get there, right, have a place to come back to where they can lend their gifts and help continue to build the city that they're from.
Yeah, I love that. Because even when I think about our situation with the teacher shortage, we know that teachers don't go into education to get rich.
No.
And we also know that in our city that some of them can't afford safe housing here, and so with everything that you just unpacked in terms of what it means for our young people, but even for our current citizens, our teachers, and any of our underrepresented or marginalized community members. I love that vision. And a piece that I really heard is that the collaboration and the working together is sometimes one of our barriers.
I think so. And to double down on your point about teachers, when we do our work with Black educators, our professional development and community building programs, they talk about wanting, of course, to be excellent educators in front of children, right? Wanting to be excellent instructors. But they also talk about needing holistic support, right?
Yeah.
They want to be great parents of their own children.
Absolutely.
They want to care for their own aging parents. They want to buy a house in a city where it's not that affordable to live, right? They want to do all the things that we want to do as we move through life. And I think we need to be thinking about teacher support more holistically, right? Not just about shoring up what is happening instructionally, right? That is important and critical and the number one thing. But how are we helping, our educators get connected to a more sustainable life in this city?
Quality of life, right?
It matters.
It matters.
It matters.
Well, as we wrap up, can you just share if your greatest aspirations for BNOLA were fully realized, what would success look like?
Joy-filled.
Yes, I love that.
Joy-filled children attending high-quality schools where they're receiving, loving, culturally relevant, and competent instruction. That, to me, is the North Star. It's the North Star of our work. I think we can get there. We have to do a little bit more truth-telling about where we are.
Indeed.
And we have to get into the forensics of how we get to where we want to be. But I think that vision is achievable, well within our lifetime. And that's what I'm here for.
Completely agree. I completely agree. Thank you so much, Adrin, for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
This has been an amazing fireside chat. And I look forward to continuing to work with you as we work together to make our school system and our community as best it can be.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Bye, y'all.